Hi everybody. Right now I'm testing version 1.5 and I think it's ready to go. So let's just jump into it and figure out the new functions and tasks we can execute with this new version of EaZyRemesh. So I'm just going to go through all the tools I have available. I've put on different subtools and we go through the functions really quick and then move on to the hard surface stuff. So the original version of the EaZyRemesh, you have your polypaint on and then you press your resolution. So let's say 5K. You do a polygroup first. So you do a polygroup from paint first, and then you remesh it. That's if you have polypaint on it. And you have that. If you have UVs on and you morph UVs, it will give you a UV'd version. If you don't have it on, let's say we half it, you will have no UVs. So that button won't activate. It won't do anything really because the UVs aren't activated. That's the normal standard poly painting EaZyRemesh. It works really well. Let's go half again. And you can go back to UVs. So you have that available to you if you want to use UVs and morphing and do some painting on it. So let's move on to the next one, which is the slice it. Again, if you have pressed half before, you have to press the resolution because that half is set and you have to change the number again. So let's go back to 5K and go to slice it, and again you get a nice result from that. You keep on halving it, doesn't matter which one you use because this is straight lines, so you get a good result. If you UV again, half it, you get your UVs if you morph. And let me just go to the front, you can see what it looks like and you're good to go. Next one, this one is, oh yeah, this is for masking. So if you have a mask on, you can kind of like get your masking here. It will give you poly groups based on your mask. If you don't want to have just that, you want to extract it. I think this is one of the functions that people don't think about or remember very well. If you press down Alt when you press mask, it gives you an extraction which is really clean and it's not based on rough edges. You don't get rough edges. So if you start halving this, you can see how clean it is. It's basically an extraction from the original version. And if you want to increase the thickness of it, all you need to do is go to the Z modeler brush and you can quickly kind of like do a Q mesh polygroup all, and you can kind of like extrude it as you want. If you don't want to have an extra slice, you hold down shift when you do it and it's kind of like an extrusion, so you kind of like make it thicker if you want. That's the mask it. And then this is the one with the break off. So let me just get rid of this tool right here because it makes you a new tool down here. So we can get rid of this guy, hide that one, go here. This one is the break off, which is basically you're doing some prototyping and you want to kind of like break off a piece. Again, that's what this is for. You can either do a break off with EaZyRemesh or without, depending on if you hold the Alt button. And if you go back up, you have your original piece. You can just do another Dynamesh and keep on masking stuff and breaking stuff off if you want. That's pretty handy, and you can move this guy around and do whatever you want to him, and you know, keep on sculpting or doing stuff to that piece you've broken off. And then we have the clean version, the clean mesh version. If you want to have sharp edges from your masking, the recommended thing to do is to have a really high, relatively high polygon version of this, so you can break off a clean piece with edges and stuff. So if I do a mask for this bit, this bit here, and go to my mask it version, I can do a halt, and I'll get a version of this guy, which is kind of like sharp corners and what have you, which I can use for whatever I want. If I want to kind of like sharpen, so you can see that you have this piece, this big Pac-Man piece, which has all these like sharp corners extracted cleanly with nice polygroups and stuff. And if you half it again, you'll get like, it will keep the polygroups and have, you know, you'll have the polygroups and the sharp edges as well, so you can use that if you want to do extractions with sharp pieces. Okay, let's talk about decimation. We've got these two guys. We've got the small version of this head and the large version of his head. And the reason I added two versions was because if you have a model the size of a sphere and you have an STL model, like a real world model scale head, or something brought in as an STL into Zbrush, it comes in really large. And as you can see, they're both got the same number of points, 5.2 million polygons or points. If we were to use normal EaZyRemesh on this model, it would take about 38 seconds because I did the timing. And if you use Decimation, it takes 18 seconds. So it takes about 20 seconds less than if you were to use Decimation. So that's why I added these two versions. What it does, it decimates the model before doing the remesh, and then you get a nice clean result. So let's go 10K, do a decimate. This is the small one. This is the big one. Let's do the small one first. Decimation should take about 18 seconds altogether. If I were to do the normal remesh on this, it would take 38 seconds. That's why I added a decimate for objects with very large number of polygons, and I added an algorithm to cater for two sizes, so you get the same result you would for this guy as you would for the large guy. Rule of thumb, anything the size of a sphere or anything the size that's a normal subtool, use a small version, and anything the size of a large real scale head, I would recommend using the large decimate version for that, and you will get the same results that you would get using the small one. So I'll show you the result for this right now. Take a few seconds, and you see that it's the same kind of topology and cleanness of the large of the small one, based on the algorithm I used. If you were to use this one on a small model, it would just melt it because it's taking up different sizes and objects in the object space. So you can see it's exactly the same result, and if you half it, you get the same kind of flow and result for each one. So something to bear in mind when you're doing anything with high polygons. Use decimate, save yourself some time, and get some clean results. Now the hard surface. This guy, I just took a cube, dynameshed it, and I basically cut some slices in. And I want to show you something that I kind of did for things like this, because this is the same poly group. So if you start, let's go like to 5K, and we do a hard surface, EaZyRemesh hard surface, which is below the original one, and we do this, it will do a pretty good job of keeping the poly group separate, and you see a few errors here and whatever. But once you do a half on this guy, it will clean it up real quick. So if I do a half surface, you immediately can see that it's quite clean. Now, when it comes to stuff like this, if you want to keep this guy sharp, what I would suggest you do is you just go to your poly group and select either the slice or the knife tool. So if I go here and I go to like let's say knife in here, knife curve, and I just do a slice in here to slice it into two poly groups, sorry. Now you have this guy and that guy, right? So now let's do that again, but this time we go to like 5K because we already halved it. We do surface EaZyRemesh, and voila. Now it's got that nice edge there. Half it, and you've got some clean hard surface edges, and it will keep that consistency all the way through. So you can get some really good results from doing this halving hard surface one. I would recommend using this for things for, you know, panels, spaceships, whatever you want to make with prototyping in ZBrush before you get into sculpting stuff or adding details. Then you can divide and whatever you want to do. I also did a quick test with a concave shape. So I got a light Boolean spheres into here. I wanted to see what would happen if I used the hard surface remesh with this guy. So I did exactly the same thing. I did a EaZyRemesh hard surface, and then I waited for a few seconds for it to do its thing, and it should work. Yep, again, gave you some nice results. And I did a hard surface, half it, and there we go. So when you're making concave shapes, be aware that, you know, the lower you go, the quicker it's going to break down. So if you want to keep this shape, you know, relatively smooth, I wouldn't go too low if you have too many concave shapes. Now, if you notice here, we have this soft edge, and this is down to it not creasing here. So if you ever have this, I would recommend you using the clean mesh. What it tends to do is it takes your model and it will polygroup it and add a crease and polish it. So you now have a crease and clean edges. And you can use this for things on anything, to be honest. So if you go to like this guy, let's say this guy here, and we do a Control W on this guy, and you do clean mesh, it will basically clean, it will polish by features that area, another crease around it, so you can kind of clean up whatever you're doing. So that's quite handy as well. So yeah, so I think that covers everything. UVs work now for 2022 because it wasn't working when I updated, when Zbrush got updated in 2022. The old UV batch wasn't working, but it's working now. You have half it, you have half it hard surface, EaZyRemesh hard surface. The Decimate is working for both small and large. Mask it, slice it, and don't forget alt masking will give you that nice clean extractions. You can use the Z-Modeler brush to extract or extrude by holding shift. Slice it if you have slices in your model. Break off if you want to do prototyping, and the clean mesh to make sure you have any edges that aren't one polygroup. You can either use the select to kind of select stuff and do that, and then you can just clean up. Even if you have edges that aren't working properly in a strip or edge loop, you can kind of do a quick cleanup for them to make them nice and square or circle or whatever. So that's going to be available right now. The price will stay the same, and if you want to, if you're an existing user, you get the update for free. And I think that's it, really. You can catch me on the socials, ask me any questions about anything, send me a message. Yeah, hope you enjoy. Oh yeah, one last thing before I go. When I released the last version of EaZyRemesh, a few people reached out to me and told me that they couldn't get it working. It was giving them an error message. Zbrush wasn't calling it. It was very few number of people, but I was surprised because it's the same software using the same operating system, and I didn't know what was going on. But we figured out that it had something to do with how we call this function. So released an alternative version for them, which I sent to them, and it worked for them then. The only difference between the original version and the alternative version is that when you start EaZyRemesh, you have to press the button, the resolution button that comes here twice for the first time, and then no more subsequently. It just works after that. That's the only difference between this version and the alternative version. So if you get the tool, I'll put them both in the zip file. When you get it, if the original version doesn't work for you, just take the alternative version and put it in to the Z plugin folder, rename it EaZyRemesh.zsc, and delete the original one, and it should work fine after that. And I hope that solves all the problems. So yeah, that's about it. I hope you find it useful, and I'll catch you next time.